hadn't counted on the administration being run by a bunch of fools. So we went in.
We went over there, everyone welcomed us. Hey, thanks for coming, thanks for liberating our country. A couple people shot at us, but not too many.
So this idea that this is going to be a civil war is just preposterous, although I am kind of putting myself on a limb on that.
I've been very, very angry, and I've been very, very bitter.
Community building and make the connection.
First, we were fairly well informed on what was going on, but very quickly the world becomes a lot smaller. I didn't know what was going on with the unit north of us, or what the third ID was doing. You were concerned about what was going on directly around you. You got to be concerned about what is going on right there, right now, and not the bigger picture. We actually got short wave radios later on. We could listen to the BBC to try and figure out what was going on. I remember in Nasiriyah, the BBC guy was about a kilometer, the BBC reporter was about a kilometer from us. It was sort of like watching a sporting commentator. He'd say, there's another airstrike coming in, and the airstrike would come in, hit the works over there, and we'd watch it. It's kind of odd to listen to the radio sometimes, particularly when people all over the world are listening and it's happening right in front of you.
My first tour in Iraq wasn't that bad whatsoever. We went over there, everyone welcomed us. Hey, thanks for coming, thanks for liberating our country. A couple people shot at us, but not too many, wasn't that bad. Went back to the States, got a new platoon, and I went back to Iraq in 2004. And my second tour in Iraq was very different. The unit I was with was involved in Operation Phantom Fury in Fallujah, which was slated as the most intense urban combat since Wave City in the Tet Offensive in Vietnam. My second tour was gruesome. It was bad. A lot of deaths, a lot of violence, a lot of long nights, and a lot of missions. A grueling 7.5 months. We started out in Haditha. There we found high explosive bombs, napalm bombs, and all sorts of weapons. But no weapons of mass destruction, no chemicals. We didn't deal with anything like that. On patrol, we would blow in the front doors of houses in the middle of the night. A lot of people we were grabbing were well off, rich people. One sign they were rich is they had hard wooden doors. We knew there was a serious badass guy in a house. All right, we would blow in the gate and kick in the front door. We used a shotgun a lot for breaching. Buckshot will shoot through pretty much anything. Any military-aged males, you get them blindfolded and cuffed. All the women get separated and put in one room. We would search the house. All the military-aged males would get brought back for military interrogation. Explosives were usually secondary until we got to Fallujah. Then we just blew everything up. They didn't have a chance there. I guess after Fallujah, a lot of the insurgents ran out to Karma. When in Karma, we did SASO missions. This is what we trained for before we went to Iraq. Security and Stability Operations. It's a word that got thrown out the window as soon as we got to Fallujah. In Fallujah, we were told, shoot anything that moves.
There's two topics that have always struck me. One is the cultural situation in Iraq, and the other is the small pockets of extremely poor leadership that tend to give a black eye to all the rest of the great officers and sergeants that are out there in the military that are good leaders. And I'd just like to tell you a couple of my stories. Kirkuk was the first time that I had exposure to a large number of local Iraqis. In Kirkuk, you have a third Kurds, a third Shia, and a third Sunni. I remember we had some hardcore part of Saddam's upper administration, Sunnis, in my area, and I asked them, have you had any problem with the Shia? No. I asked the Shia, do you have any problem with those Sunnis over there? Well, no. Sometimes their sons get into a little bit of trouble, but at UMass, how many people's sons get into a little bit of trouble? As I was leaving Iraq, towards the end of my time in early 2004, I called the unification lunch, because everybody's making this big deal out of Sunni and Shia. And Sunni and Shia senior members from the tribes all over the area in Diyala province were eating together. Nobody seemed to be talking about their religious affiliations, because it's not an issue. And so this whole idea of a civil war infuriates me. It's a bunch of wasted energy. And you have people out there saying, oh, we're in a civil war now. It's sectarian violence. It's very different. It's people who lose perspective over political issues. It comes tit for tat. Who remembers who threw the first stone in the Israeli-Palestinian issue? They've been fighting each other for 5,000 years. and they're going to keep fighting each other for the next 5,000 years. We're at the beginning of this in Iraq, and it's got to stop. That's the reason we've got to get this government safe. The majority of the violence has now focused Iraqi on Iraqi, or insurgents against Iraqis. I'm convinced that the Shia mosque that was destroyed in Samarra, the insurgents did that because they knew that Shia militant groups would seek reprisals against the Sunnis, and that would create the unrest. Because the agenda of the terrorists is they don't care what's going on in Iraq as long as it's unstable.
My name is Rich Ryler. A lot of you in here might know me from the pharmacy. I've been working there for the last 18 years. Before I get into my book, or my story in the book, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. When I was a kid, I come from a big family. I got 10 brothers and sisters. 9 of us are still alive. I had one of my brothers join the military while I was still in elementary school. I had a couple of other relatives served. I lost an uncle in Vietnam, but I was always military-minded. Since 9/11 and the beginning of the war, as far as I can remember, is March 19, 2003. It's when everything started happening. I've been very, very angry, and I've been very, very bitter. And I think the way I felt made me end my 27-year career with the military. Because if you don't believe in what you're doing, you shouldn't be there. And if you don't believe in who you're doing it for, you definitely need to get out.
A little bit of training to get us ready for our tour in Iraq. And I remember being briefed, about these new things called IEDs, improvised explosive devices, which are basically bombs that the resistance fighters would put on the side of the road and try to detonate as Americans drive by. When you were most vulnerable when you were driving, and we were getting a briefing on how to respond when, how to drive in Iraq, So you drive in the middle of the road because there could be something on either side. You go fast, you don't stop at stop signs. And what do you do if there's a child in the middle of the road? And he's asking us, what do you do if there's a child in the room? Someone says, stop. No, you don't stop. I want another answer. And someone says, swerve. No. You run that little motherfucker over. And so that was like the spirit of kind of what happened. And that was like something I was, wow, this is going to be intense.
The idea that there aren't real bad guys desperate to inflict horrible, horrible damage on us is just a fantasy. And no matter how much you just want to click your ruby red slivers together and keep saying over and over again, there is no war on terror, there is no war on terror, that will not make it so.